Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom. How's it going?
Tony, we had a comment on our board from our good buddy Omar Austin, longtime friend of the show, longtime friend of Buckeye Huddle, who was a little critical of some of your recent power pauses. So I had a feeling we might get a little bit of an extra long one today. Glad to see you incorporating viewer feedback into the shows. That's good. That's big of you to be willing to learn and improve yourself and improve the show.
Yeah, I don't normally take criticism lightly, and it hurts, frankly, but sometimes you have to look inward in order to become a better person outward. And so thank you, Omar, for the criticism. Please, nobody else send any criticism, only thumbs up, likes, 5-star ratings, and reviews. No more criticism. I can't take anymore. But whatever kind of feedback you want to send, I guess we can let Tom look at it first, and then whatever I can handle, he will send on to me. So want to welcome everybody in. Go ahead, Tom.
We can I'll incorporate some of my own own feedback into the viewer feedback that I pass along to you. Like, get to who's this Langdon Alger that keeps providing viewer feedback? Oh, I don't know. He's a frequent commenter on the viewer question shows. So
yeah, you're going to send in so many mean comments. I'm like, Tom, you're supposed to give me the ones that I can handle. He's like, oh, you're like, oh, I thought you could handle this one, talking about how stupid and lazy and all of these things that you are. And it's like, no, I can't. But anyway, welcome in everybody. Go ahead and put your questions in the chat, and we'll get to them. Super chats if you want to go do that as well. But we have now wrapped up 2 weeks of Ohio State's one-day camps. Had 2 camps this week, so I thought we'd spend some time talking about what we saw, and of course anything you guys want to talk about, throw that in there as well. And when we're at camp, generally we don't spend too much time. Tom and I don't spend too much time at the same place, because it's almost the worst way to watch a camp when you're trying to cover 4 fields and all of these different positions and see what you can see. And so some of the guys that I saw, Tom maybe just didn't see, and some of the guys that he saw maybe I didn't see. So we can go back and forth. But the first guy that I want to mention is one of the youngest guys there, the first 2028 guy with an offer, who is Eric McFarland, sorry. Yeah, who is a 2028 receiver heading into his freshman year at IMG. He's already at IMG. He's from Las Vegas originally, and already has an Ohio State offer, already has offers from Georgia and Florida State. But just really, really quick, only right now like 5'8", 170, I think is what his profile is listed at on one of the recruiting services. And to tell you how good he is, he's one of the rare 2028 guys with a recruiting profile at this point on the sites. But we talked to him after the camp. They talked about how Ohio State and LSU were his top 2, and that's what it's going to come down to, which is a crazy thing to say this far out. But I reached out to somebody at another school about him, and they told me that he camped at their school as a 7th grader and ran a 4.39, and it was hand timed. And one of the coaches got mad at the GA who timed it, because he thought, like, this is way off, and got angry about the kid running that fast, thinking that it wasn't possible. And no, maybe it wasn't a 4.39 at the time. Maybe it was like a 4.42 instead. But that's what we're talking about, a 7th grader doing that at that point. Now, 1 and 2 years later, at this point, as now in the interim between 8th grade and his freshman year, is going to have offers from everybody, and was just one of the standouts for me. Certainly one of the standouts for me this week.
Definitely. And you got to remember, he has not stepped foot in a high school classroom yet. So we're calling him a freshman, but he's going to be a freshman this fall. And he already has offers from Ohio State. He has an offer from Georgia. I talked to Mark Givler on the morning show after that camp on, Tuesday? And he said he might have been the best player at the camp. And this was not like, oh, well, there's no talent here. There was plenty of talent there. There was plenty of guys who have Ohio State offers. There's plenty of Power 5 guys who are going to go to other schools. And a guy who had not stepped foot on a high school football field yet might have been the best player at the camp. That is mind blowing. And, I saw people, commenting, well, he's only 5'8", boy, I hope he still grows. He's literally just finished middle school. Like, yeah, he's still going to grow. Like very few people, especially very few boys, are done growing at the end of 8th grade. Generally, you're going to put out, you're going to have 3, 4, 5, 6 more inches of height, and you're going to probably put on some weight as well during high school. And yeah, I think he is one of those guys. It's crazy to be talking about a guy who was just in middle school this way. Like, I remember when Tate Martell got his first offer from, was it Washington, I think? Yeah. And he was in like 7th grade, and it's like, that's stupid. Like, that's objectively stupid. And, he turned into, he was a very, very good high school player and just never really panned out at the college level. But, you could certainly see the talent there. This is another one where I would be very surprised if he does not turn into a very, 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 very good high school player. If you're at IMG as a freshman and you're we'll see which team he's on. Is he on the big national team? If he's on the national IMG team as a freshman, like, goodness, that's going to be crazy. And, Brian Hartline, this was not that he earned an offer this week. He already had an offer from Ohio State. So Brian Hartline has been on this one very, very early. And, I think he's probably someone who is going to want to work with Brian Hartline, I would guess. And sounds like Ohio State's right near the top of the list. Thank you to Glasswing Butterfly, valued Buckeye Huddle member, for the super chat. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for that. I saw a question there from thank you, Glasswing, for that. I wanted to address of course, the power pause was excellent. I took that feedback and I internalized it, and I've made everybody better for it. Mecca Hannah was asking about Bod Miller, who's a 2025 Ohio receiver who worked out yesterday or Tuesday. And again, it's hot out there these days. Run together. It was yesterday, I believe. And so I watched him. Hartline was on him and working him out beforehand with some of the other top receivers that were there. And he's all of 6'4", and he was getting in and out of his cuts pretty good. There's some good in-state 2025 receivers who probably aren't going to get offers. I don't know if he's going to get an offer or not, but you got like Preston Bowman, picked north, I think. And he was good last week. And so I don't know about the Ohio receivers in 2025, if they're going to be able to get the offer, or if they're going to wait, if they're going to be patient enough to go through a senior season and see if an offer, if it doesn't come now, if an offer comes in November or December, as Ohio State isn't necessarily hitting their numbers at receiver, if they're not hitting their numbers.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible. I don't expect them to have issues hitting their numbers at receivers this year. And this is one of these situations where it is very difficult to get an offer from Brian Hartline, because Brian Hartline is just shopping in the, he's not going to the used car dealer. He's not even going to the like mid-priced, reasonable new car dealer. He is going to the luxury car, sports car shop, and that's it. That is where he shops. And, he has been, he will put, he'll put out offers to guys, but if, it's generally when he's putting out offers to guys that don't have, offers from everyone, it's because he's very, very early, because he's putting out an offer to a 2028 guy, or, even what was it, 2 years ago that he offered Mylan Graham at camp, and everyone was like, who? And then Mylan Graham turned into a 5-star. Jackson Smith and Jigba, everyone looked, why are they offering this kid? He's not rated, in the 400s or something. And then, Jackson Smith and Jigba turned into Jackson Smith and Jigba. So it's not that easy to get a Brian Hartline offer. And the biggest problem they have is you're going to be fairly limited in spots, because there are other positions on the field where, we're going to, I'm sure, talk about running back recruiting. Like 2025, they might strike 3 running backs in 2025. And yeah, it's going to be a big class, but they've already got 14 guys committed, something like that. And only one of them is a running back. So, okay, 2 more of them are going to be running backs. Well, they've got to load up at offensive line this year too. They got to load up at defensive line this year too. They can't take everyone. And that is going to result in in-state guys. Corner's another position that's like this, where we have seen, it was Dwayne Galloway. It was like the incredibly impressive performance from Dwayne Galloway at a camp. It's like he's going to go make a Big Ten program somewhere very happy. It is probably not going to be Ohio State because Ohio State has the number 1 and number 2 corners in the class already committed, and the number 4 corner potentially, or number 5 corner, I guess now, Dorian Brew, potentially, on the potential commitment list. You can't take 7 corners in the class. You can't take 7 wide receivers in the class. You gotta fill all the other spots. And unfortunately, that's going to mean there are going to be in-state guys who are very talented, who maybe even in a typical a typical year might get an Ohio State offer. This cycle, it might not happen, and you're going to end up with Ohio State fans, yelling at their TVs 2 years from now. Why did Ohio State not take that guy?
Yeah, and you've seen guys that were really good, and not necessarily guys from Ohio, but guys that maybe wanted an Ohio State offer, and Ohio State didn't pull the trigger, like a David Bell went on to star at Purdue, and it's like, ugh. But as we also know, Purdue can out recruit Ohio State like they did with Rondale Moore. So sometimes, you try, but you can't get everybody. And I see Mecca talking about Quincy Porter as well, another guy that really good receiver from New Jersey, Ohio State, and Michigan. We'll see there. I guess the key is to have faith in Brian Hartline, and he has not disappointed yet. And even when a class ends up being a disappointment or disappointing, like the 2022 class, he has ways of making up for it, as he did in 2023, as he's done in 2024. And we'll see how he does in 2025. 2026 already off to a rousing start with Chris Henry Jr. So things still seem pretty okay there. Do you want to talk about somebody, or I can jump in on another guy?
Well, I want to address Mika Hanna's update on Trey McNutt. And, the update on Trey McNutt is there is no update on Trey McNutt right now. I talked to Mark about him earlier in the week, and, right now the safety class is nuts. They have the secondary class is nuts. Mm-hmm. They've got David Sanchez, the number 1 corner in the class, committed. They have Naheem Offord, the number 2 corner in the class, currently committed. They have Dorian Brew, who's the number 5 corner in the class, who may play corner, may play safety the next level. We'll see. He is certainly, Ohio State is certainly at least on his short list. They just got Faheem Delane, who is a number 2 safety in the class. They just got a commitment from him earlier in the week. So, and then they've got other guys in the class as well in that secondary group. And McNutt, of course, is in a Buckeye legacy. His dad is Richard McNutt, the former Ohio State corner, who I think is now still on staff with Eddie George at Tennessee State. He is, they would love to get Trey McNutt. They are probably, certainly in the running for Trey McNutt. Are they the favorite right now? Mark was kind of, maybe not. We'll see. They're you want to call it a coin flip, you can call it a coin flip, but there are plenty of other programs going very hard after him. So, we'll see. That one will probably drag on a little bit into the fall. We will see where that one ends up. So absolutely not a lost cause, absolutely not a mortal lock that he ends up a Buckeye, somewhere in between. As I talked to Mark about earlier in the week, if they get McNutt and if they hang on to Naheem Offord and, Sanchez and Delane, and you get Brew, you're talking about not just the greatest secondary class in Ohio State history. You're talking about the greatest secondary class in the history of college football recruiting, period, full stop. No one else even has really an argument at that point. And you look back at some of the great secondary classes they've got in the past, where you got Jeff Okudah and you got Sean Wade in the same class, how much that impacted that 2019 defense a couple of years later. If you get and I think Jordan Fuller was in that same recruiting class. If you get that same kind of class again now, man, just go ahead and write down the 2027 Ohio State Buckeyes as going to have a really good defense. Mm-hmm. And, in the college football playoff era, you're going to be playing more, you're not just going to be playing Big Ten teams 12 times a year. And then, you got to win one game or 2 games against other teams from other parts of the country. You're going to have to play a lot of teams from a lot of parts of the country. That's going to really, really give you a pretty dynamic defense to set you up for success in the playoffs long term.
Yeah, and the way they've got the secondary class shaping up right now, you've got your 2 corners. They obviously want another. With Faheem Delane, I kind of see him as a strong safety, and that's a little bit of what he's played in high school, and he plays closer to the line of scrimmage. He can play closer to the line of scrimmage, so he's very comfortable doing that. Deshaun Stewart is has played corner quite a bit, and you can see him maybe being the free safety of the class. Cody Haddad, I believe, dealt with injuries, but he's just a maniac. If you go ahead and watch his huddle after this, not now, after this, but he's a violent dude, and interesting. We'll see what happens with his rankings. Not that that's the end all be all, but when more people see him and what he becomes. But they've got a secondary right now in this class, and they're still trying to build on it because you can never really have enough defensive backs and defensive ends and defensive tackles, and then you just find linebackers amongst your bigger safeties, basically.
Yeah. And here, let's transition right from finding linebackers among your bigger safeties to, your bigger linebackers. Mika wants to know, do we offer Sincere Johnson? If so, what position does he play? Sincere Johnson, a linebacker out of Glenville. He was at camp yesterday. Got a chance to watch him. He was working with the linebackers. He was working with Brian Hartline. That being said, he is going into his junior year of high school and is already listed at 6'3", 225. And I can tell you, looking at him, he looks like a college-sized linebacker already. So the question then is, where does he play at the college level? Because if you're 225 now and you've got 2 more years of high school, you're probably coming into college at 230, 235, which would be, basically linebacker size already. And then you're in an Ohio State strength program, you're probably getting up to 240, 245-ish. I mean, if you're 16 or whatever you are at the end of your sophomore year, you're probably not done growing. So that's probably one where you're looking at maybe more of a Jack, or maybe he comes down and plays a true defensive end at the college level. You got to see how he keeps growing. I talked to Mark about him, and he said he's not going to be a Will. He's not going to be like a walkout guy. He's not going to be like the Sonny Styles size linebacker. Maybe he sticks at the Mike. Maybe he can be that middle linebacker, the sort of bigger middle Cody Simon kind of linebacker, maybe. But there's also a possibility he grows into something bigger than that, and just got to kind of see where he goes. And then you got to see, okay, what does the Ohio State defense look like in 2 years? Because they have been the 4-down look for quite a while, but Jim Knowles has talked about bringing in the Jack and doing more with that. And they're talking to recruits about bringing in the Jack, which means if you're talking to recruits about it, you got to deliver. Otherwise, recruits are going to look and go, well, obviously you're not telling me the truth. So that's going to impact, this is that more than anything else makes me think that maybe this really will be the year that we see more of that. So we'll see.
Yeah. And we've talked about it before. And I think you talked with Mark about it before. It's like, you can't keep, if you're talking to recruits about it, you've got to show it on the field. You would need the proof of concept basically out there to convince people like that is happening. And I see it's just me, Tim 79, doubting that it will happen. I'm with you, Tom. Maybe it's just a few of us that are out on that limb saying it's going to happen this year because behind the scenes they're talking about it. So if you're going to talk about it, you eventually have to do it. Sincere Johnson, reminiscent of Arvell Reese from Glenville, who was like, is he going to be is he going to outgrow linebacker? And remember, he did play some defensive end. He moved to defensive end pretty early in fall camp last year, then got hurt and on a kickoff, but they needed him at defensive end for a little bit, so they put him there. And we saw him. I don't know if you saw him. I saw him yesterday. Like, this dude he's much bigger. Not much. He's bigger than Sincere Johnson. Like, he looks like a college veteran at this point. Arvell Reese, just a big guy, but he's also still at linebacker. So he's at Mike. He's running with the threes at Mike, and will be contending for the job next year when Cody Simon leaves, assuming he isn't also in that Jack position discussion, because that is a guy that Jim Knowles has talked about in that role. But of course, you've got to go ahead and do it. And as Mecca says, any word on how CJ Hicks looks, he's going to look fantastic in workouts. He's always going to look fantastic in workouts and very athletic, but it's the football aspect and the reactions and the keys and the linebacker things that, that film work and all of that stuff that he has to improve on and be more consistent with. And we'll see if that happens.
Right. All the stuff that you're kind of waiting on, waiting on to see with him, they haven't been able to do any of that since April. So we have no update because there's no update there.
Mm,
That's, we will have further updates during fall camp as they roll into that, and you start doing more 11 on 11 kind of live action stuff. You're right now limited. I don't know if people know all the rules on this, and
yeah.
I don't want to get too
No.
specific because I'll say something slightly wrong. But you can right now. You could have guys out there, and they could be out there with coaches, I think, to a certain degree, but you can't have a football on the field. So you can be out there and you can kind of do walkthrough kind of stuff, but you can't actually have a football on the field. And guys can be out there with footballs, but then coaches can't be out there right now. So you're really limited in what you can do this time of year, because this is the NCAA pretending that football is not a year-round sport. It's like, oh yeah, I'm sure they're all just going to class right now, and no one's going to the football building. And it's like, all right, we'll see you at the start of football season in a few months. Like it's not really how it works, but it's the NCAA trying to impose some limitations on how much you can do and when you can do it. There were a couple of questions about the offensive line recruiting. Matt Reynolds says defense looked really good. If you have elite quarterbacks and no great offensive line, then you have issues. And that transitions into Mika's question. Do we offer Adam Guthrie? I want him, Sam Greer, Maxwell Riley, Will Conroy, Micah Champ Smith, and Manny Iniacho in 26. And, this is a loaded Ohio offensive line class in 2026. Like national recruits, Greer, Riley, Conroy, all in-state recruits, all people who are in the top 15 or 20 or something like that at their position group nationally. Guthrie's kind of up there as well. We saw Guthrie at camp earlier in the week. And, Micah Champ Smith out of Florida, he's been there. He's made enough visits to Ohio State that you kind of, it's easy to put a school logo on your, top 5 kind of graphic. It is not as easy to make, 3 or 4 trips up from Florida to Ohio on your own dime. That kind of shows me, yes, really does mean it when he says he's looking very seriously at Ohio State. And then Manny was at camp yesterday. Manny was at camp on Thursday, and he's just one of those guys where we've talked before about, you can look across multiple fields. There's 4 fields set up, and you can look from across multiple fields to the offensive lineman. And in a group of big offensive linemen, there's, the guy who stands out, just physically stands out from the rest of them. That's him. Very impressive on Thursday. If you can take your core of Ohio players and you maybe get a Champ Smith in there as well, and then you can add in a 5-star like that on top of that group. And maybe you can add a 5-star like David Sanders in 25. That's what a really, really good Ohio State offensive line looks like. If you can get that, you've got a good core of in-state guys the last couple of years. You've added in, an Ian Moore here and guys like that from out of state. There's another guy out of West Virginia in 26 whose name I'm blanking on right now, but there's another really good offensive lineman. They could conceivably take 6 guys on the offensive line next year. I mean, maybe 7. I mean, all of these numbers are a little bit, everything's a little bit in pencil right now, because with the transfer portal, how many guys are going to be there next year? You used to just be able to slide everyone one column right on your spreadsheet, and it was like, okay, well, all the sophomores will be juniors next year. It's like, well, how many of them are going to be there now? You don't really know. And some of the guys will choose to stay who you don't expect to. Some of the guys might leave who you don't expect to. Ohio State has had Luke Whippler leave for the NFL draft a year before anyone in the building thought he was going to leave, other than Luke Whippler. So it's a little bit hard to plan. And in cases like that, especially at a position, Tony, like the offensive line, where it's so developmental, and you can't just bring in 3 guys and just patch over the hole. It's going to take a little bit of time. I would tend toward bringing in more guys on the offensive and defensive lines in a class. Bring in 1 more than you think you need, because too many offensive linemen is not a problem that any program has ever had.
Well, here's the issue that you're going to start running into with the portal is that the Adam Guthrie is, a 3-star from, I think, Miami Trace, has some decent offers. But, and I'm not saying he's a project, but say he is a project. Say he's like a Zen Mihalski, where you're going to have to put all of this time and effort into him. Is it better for Ohio State to allow another school to do that and then you use that spot for a portal guy, where you can, he contributes more. Basically, you bring somebody in as a junior, or Josh Simmons, and you've got that now where he's going to contribute right away. And so everything that you've put into Josh Simmons, you get out equally, as opposed to now, is it better to put all this effort into developing somebody and maybe you get something out of them their fourth and fifth year? And I wonder how much they're torn and how to do this. And do you, because you don't want somebody that looks like a project now, but only just needs a year or two in your program, and they will be, that diamond in the rough. If you can have it, it's going to be a diamond in the rough, and it's eventually going to be something polished, but quickly. Certainly, you wouldn't want that guy to go anywhere else. You'd like to have him the entire time, but you don't know that. You think all of these guys are diamonds in the rough, and some of them, never materialize. And so I wonder if at some point you're like, what, let's let somebody else develop them. When they're ready, then they'll come to us or we'll go to them. But at that point, you also need to be more aggressive in the portal, which is something that Ohio State has not yet done with the offensive line. So Justin Fry's got a lot on his plate in terms of, and Ryan Day as well, in terms of how they want to handle this, because I could make the argument that you go and get the top guys, the Sam Greer, the Max Riley, the Will Conroy, but you don't need to do the Jacob James anymore, or, guys that have transferred out that, guys that, again, don't rely on rankings, but are in, the 700s or something like that. You don't necessarily need to go get those guys anymore, because you can instead go to the portal and get somebody who's played college football for 3 years.
Well, and I think the important thing about using the portal on the offensive line is if you need to go fill one hole, you can do that. You can bring in one guy. You can bring in your Jonah Jackson. You can bring in your Josh Simmons, and that's totally fine. What you can't rely on the portal to do is the Deion Sanders method, which is like, all right, we're just going to run this like a hockey line change, or we're just going to bring in 5 new offensive linemen this year because the 5 guys last year were bad. That doesn't work. It is too developmental of a position. You've got to have guys in the system multiple years. Josh Simmons, I think, is almost like the platonic ideal of a transfer, because they brought him in with multiple years of eligibility left. So he came in and was okay at the beginning of the year, arguably their best offensive lineman by the end of the year, and then back now for another year where he should start the year already at the good to maybe very good level, and then have an opportunity to continue to improve from there. That's kind of what you want to do. But with all of this stuff, it has to be built on high school recruiting. That is never going to not be the case. We gotta do a very quick correction for Tony. He's already acknowledged it. Okay, good. Yes. Mika Henna.
Again, I'm fine with the constructive criticism when it's framed nicely. Just don't be mean about it, please.
So here's one from Mika to make it up. Do we land Isaiah West and Jordan Davison as well? Really want to break the modern day curse. Ohio State, of course, already has one running back in the class. Isaiah West is visiting this weekend, I believe. And, that's one that seems like that has been trending towards Ohio State pretty strongly. So I would think you are in decent shape there, barring a surprise. Jordan Davison's another one where
next week.
Jordan Davison, I believe, visits next week. Yeah. So it sounds like they are okay with taking 3 running backs. I think there was a little bit of internal conversation about how many running backs you really wanted to take, but with Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins potentially both going after this year, you don't have Dallin Hayden around anymore. You don't have Chip Trainum around anymore. You don't have Evan Pryor around anymore. So then it's just James Peoples, Sam Williams-Dixon, and whoever you bring in this year. Plus, do you bring in a transfer or something like that? That's a talented group. It's a very young group. You would have Peoples, Sam Williams-Dixon, and then your 2 to 3 true freshman running backs in 25. That's fine. You can make that work. That's a place where you can play guys early, and it's not a big deal. But you really do need to kind of restock that cupboard a little bit. And if they don't take 3, or they don't end up with 3, you almost certainly have to go get someone in the portal for next year. But if they can get 3, I think you take 3. And I think Jordan Davison is certainly not a done deal at this point, but I would say as good a bet to break the modern day curse as anyone I can think of right now off the top of my head. Because, they've been in on guys. I don't feel like they've been, unless I'm forgetting someone, I don't feel like there was ever anyone where it was like this commitment feels imminent and he's definitely going to stick. And in case you're wondering what the modern day curse is, Ohio State has been, talking to guys, recruiting guys out of modern day high school in California, but they haven't actually signed one since Nikki Sualua in 1991. Was it? We decided it was quite a while ago.
Well, and if it's not Davison, then pretty good chance it'll be Chris Henry Jr., who has transferred there. I think you'd have a much better chance with Davison if there weren't 2 guys already in the class. If Isaiah West does commit, and so boy, 3 in a class is always it's a lot, and generally the 3rd guy is not one of the top running backs in the nation. It's a guy that you're like, sure, we'll take him. We've got room. So it'll be, thank you for that comment, Kevin Noon. It'll be, I'm so distracted now, but we'll see if it happens. Again, as Tom said, West this weekend, Davison next weekend, and they'll go from there. And so, yes.
All right. And Anthony Mascotti says, do we expect any booms this weekend from official visits? If I was going to make a list of most likely commitments to happen this week, I would have Isaiah West at the top of that list. I think, you never know. They're bringing in, I think they have 10 or 11 guys coming in this weekend. And, you're still relatively early in the process. There's still another week or 2 of officials still to come. So guys who are taking their 4 or 5 visits this month, this is not necessarily their last one. You're probably going to see most of those guys see that process out. A lot of the summer decisions tend to come in the first week or 2 of July, end of June, first week or 2 of July, once the guys have gone through their whole visit process and, then gone home and had taken a couple days, taken a week to kind of really sort through, talk things through with your parents, all that kind of stuff. That's when you typically see a lot of these. But yeah, I will say Isaiah West is the most likely to be a commitment if there is a commitment this weekend.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Mika asking about it, the opinion on Storm Miller. Saw him a little bit yesterday. I got over there for the linebackers versus the running backs and the one-on-ones, and he was getting coached up. And I think he got his offer. I believe he's the brother of Blake Miller, who went to Clemson. And from the get some feedback after the interview saying the people that were there that were talking to him about how he felt he maybe should have been offered sooner. So from talking to people, they feel like he's a Clemson guy rather than an Ohio State guy. So we'll see on that one. But that's, there are guys that look better athletically, but also like he was, he got an offer. So James Laurinaitis certainly saw what he wanted. And there are some decent running backs in that group that were going against them as well, including Derek Cooper and Anthony McMullen, who's a 2026 guy way under the radar that more people probably start talking about after this summer. But we'll see. The family thing, the Clemson thing, I think that's going to be hard to beat.
Yeah, I mean, his older brother was one of the great Greg Stadwara misses towards the end of his tenure, where absolutely should have been an Ohio State, easy lock and just didn't get closed. And so now you have a brother who's been going to Clemson and had a nice career at Clemson. And, there's probably a little bit of irritation on the family side based on the last thing. And if you feel like you weren't offered it early enough in this one, sure, that probably exacerbates that. The other piece of this, Tony, is if you go to Clemson, you can always transfer to Ohio State. If you go to Ohio State, the only transfers Dabzo takes is from high school. So as he so eloquently said earlier in the year, we took a bunch of transfers this year. They're in high school. Like, well, that's not what transfer means, but okay.
Mm-hmm. Do we have any do we want to get through these star questions? Okay.
Yeah. So it's just me. Tim wants to know about Aaron Dunston, the recruiting coordinator who left Ohio State this week to go to Michigan. He's asking, will we get any food? We don't generally get food from the recruiting folks. That's a different.
I will say we ate this week the boxed lunches after camps.
That's true.
There have been some boxed lunches left over for the media. So, but that has nothing to do with anything.
Mm-hmm.
No. Although also, Tom, I will say we do get Sour Patch Kids sometimes after games that are left for the recruits.
Yes, the bowl of random candy in the back of the post-game press conference room when we've been doing post-game show for 3 hours and I haven't eaten since pregame. Yeah, that's always fun. So as far as the Aaron Dunston move goes, I know there was a great deal of consternation about this, and how could you go from Ohio State to Michigan? And she has a sister who is up in Ann Arbor, and so there is a little bit of a family tie there. And she was not an Ohio State person. She came to Ohio State from Kansas, I think, and had been in a couple different places before. So this is not a lifelong Ohio State person by any means. And so jumped to Michigan and also got she went from director of on-campus recruiting, I believe, to program director of the program or something like that. It was a title bump, which probably comes with a salary bump. And, that's the kind of move that you might make if you were an upwardly mobile, 20 something, early 30 something.
Yeah. Nobody's going to stay as on-campus recruiting director for 40 years. These are all stepping stones to being whatever you want to be, whether it's athletic director or whatever. It's just part of the rise. So.
Yeah, and I think that there have been people in the thread on our board. There were people asking, the Michigan people talking about how the Ohio State program is terrible and soft and broken, and a total disaster, and they can't believe what a mess it is and how soft it is. And here they've hired now the running backs coach and now the director of on-campus recruiting from Ohio State, which would sort of lead you to believe that maybe they don't view Ohio State as quite as broken as some folks online might have you lead you to believe. Here's one which Ohio Bookseller says, on Donut Day, someone in quotes said that he could eat 40 Krispy Kreme donuts. Let's see it. Was that you? Wasn't me. I can tell you it was not me.
I know Mark Gibler before has said he could probably do like 2 dozen or something without a problem. I know I could do a dozen easy. I don't know if it's easy, but they're really, really good. And I have also seen, have you seen the people that just squeeze down a dozen and it turns into about like that, and then you just eat it like a Big Mac?
That feels like it would
40's too much.
That feels like it would have the density of like a collapsed star, like smushing a dozen donuts together.
Well, don't worry, it expands in your stomach.
Yeah, that's a dozen donuts feels like you could. A dozen, yeah, sure, I could probably do that, but I don't. I can tell what I would feel like if I did that, and that's just. That is not a feeling I desire to have. So therefore, no, thank you. I had to share a hotel room out with Kevin Noon after he had 150 pickles. I don't want to. No, thank you. That was not a lesson that I personally had to learn firsthand. I was able to sort of extrapolate what I feel like when I eat, 6 pickle chips or whatever. I'm like, oh, that's plenty of pickle chips, and I don't need to do 30 times that many, 20 times that many. No, thank you. Respectfully declined.
You don't feel the need to just find out for yourself?
No, I don't. Find out is step 2. Find out is step 2. That's why I generally don't do step 1. That's because in that context, finding out is generally not good. Mike, with a tremendous avatar of the dead Schembecklers, says Tony Chestnut. Except you have not been banned from anywhere. So
no, the biggest news in the sports world is Kobayashi versus Joey Chestnut on September 2nd. This is something that should have happened a long time ago, and it used to happen, and then it went away, and now we want it back. It's everything old is new again. So I know we're all very, very excited for that. Tom, it's on Netflix, which is a streaming service that you can get on your computer.
I am not familiar. Well, I am familiar with Netflix. I am not familiar with what the terms or the stakes of this particular matchup are. What are they eating?
Winner takes all, which
all what? Be more specific.
Well, I think they're doing this for money. And
Uh-huh.
you have to, like with all competitions, you have to keep it down for a certain amount of time. But also the bragging rights, really, I think is really what is most important, because there are some people who still view Kobayashi as the greatest of all time, as you know. And of course, we here in America view Joey Chestnut as one of our great forefathers, and probably should be on the Mount Rushmore of Mount Rushmore. Like, he should get rid of one of those guys and have Joey Chestnut up there somewhere. I think that you got to modernize things, as we know. Like, you can't just keep doing stuff from the 1800s. It doesn't work anymore. You got to, get into the 2020s, for crying out loud.
There's still room up there. There's room on the right. You could put something else up there. That's have you been to Mount Rushmore?
No, I hear it's pretty small.
It is, yes, it is pretty small. It is also very far from literally everything else. So we did a family vacation out to Yellowstone a couple of years ago, and it was like, well, it's not close, but we're never going to be closer than this. So, and it was like 6 hours or something like that. And it was like, oh, look, we did it. We have seen it. It is, and there's other
Well,
stuff out there. Plus, that's one of those places, Tony, where I love that. I love that part of the country. I would maybe live in that part of the country if I did not have other considerations going on. But it is that is a gorgeous, gorgeous drive, and you go through a bunch of little small towns with fun little, bars, local flavor. It is fantastic. Of course, I was there during the summer, which is, I think, the best time of year to be there, because it's not a million degrees, and it's also not snowing sideways for 9 months. So maybe that
no,
impacted my view of it.
I'm done going and checking out rock-based monuments after seeing Plymouth Rock.
Oh, that is, yes, that is
So,
save your time. It is. We did that one. I did that one as a little kid, and I remember even as whatever, a third grader, being like, "Wait, what? Where's the rest? What?" It's just right. Like, it feels like going to Ireland and doing the Blarney Stone is probably very similar, except you probably get some kind of canker sore or something from kissing the same thing that 10,000 other people have kissed that day.
yeah, you can't even get down there and kiss the rock. It's kind of a ripoff, but whatever. I'm not gonna. In terms of the last couple of boy, Mika's got some in here.
Wait, well, I've got
okay.
some starred ones, but
Oh,
this is a incredible one from Troy. Kobayashi was much better in The Usual Suspects than the food eating circuit. 10 out of 10, no notes.
two goats there for sure. Yes.
Kevin Noon jumps in with Fraggle greater than Plymouth in terms of rocks. Strong agree. Let's see. So let's get to a couple from Mika Hanna about all good recruiting questions. Should we be worried about Offord? Naeem Offord, number 2 corner in the class of 2025, currently committed to Ohio State, but an Alabama native. And anyone from areas where Ohio State does not, typically land a ton of people. Like Devin Sanchez is from Houston, Texas. That's an area where Ohio State has brought in a bunch of people. Devin Sanchez has been about one of the most vocal recruiters, and his parents have been among the most vocal recruiters in the class. Like that is not an Ohio kid, but every bit as solidly committed as any Ohio kid would be. Offord is probably, Offord is an Alabama kid that I'm sure Alabama and Auburn and LSU and everyone else down there would dearly love to have. And I'm sure they will, now that NIL is legal, I'm sure that there may be some offers made there that may be, may draw some attention. We'll see. That one is, probably not as absolutely going to be an easy cruise to the finish line for Ohio State as maybe a Sanchez is. Not a concern. I wouldn't be worried yet, but I think that's certainly one that you got to kind of continue to monitor until pen meets paper in December.
Yeah, and Alfred is saying all of the right things. I think he's been on the Alabama campus with some 7-on-7 and stuff like that. But he's saying all the right things. Him and Devin Sanchez are always interacting. So it feels like they like what they've got going and they want to realize this, but man, it's a long way. And it kind of reminds me of maybe it will remind me of the Sean Wade committed after the national championship game or during it or whatever. And then you just kept hearing rumors and, Alabama visits, and you had to kind of hold on for that one. So I the people who worry will be worried about this the entire time.
Mhm.
The people who are like, just carefree, the hippies in the recruiting world, and be like, yeah, if it happens, it happens. But yeah.
Well, and this is not a position group where there is one guy, and if this one guy doesn't sign, they are absolutely hosed. Like, this is not, you've got a quarterback and there's only one quarterback in the class, and you've stopped recruiting any other quarterbacks 18 months ago, and this is your guy, and that's it. And then he decommits 2 weeks before signing day, and you're just running around with your hair on fire trying to rebuild, relationships that they've had, that they haven't really been keeping on the front burner for a long time. This is one where they have, you've got Sanchez in the class. You're probably going to add another corner, whether it's Dorian Brew or someone else to the class. You've got good safeties in the class. This is an area where it's a little like wide receivers, where Ohio State, like Javon Boggs decommitted from Ohio State a month or two ago. And it was like, okay, well, if they're going to lose someone, wide receiver is a position where you should have zero concern that person will be replaced. It's like when Jackson Carman committed to Clemson, and it was like, okay, well, we'll just get Greg Schiano on the horn with his folks down at Berkeley Prep in Tampa, and they'll get Nicholas Petit Frere instead. And it worked, that worked out fine for Ohio State. So, it's not, I would certainly not worry, but I think it is a situation that merits, it will continue to merit some attention as the process continues. Another one from Mika. Does Ohio State land Tyler Atkinson? He is a 2026 outside linebacker, a 3-4 outside linebacker, 4-3 defensive end edge type, who was, he was the, guy who hasn't started high school and is already looking super impressive at Ohio State camp 2 years ago. And, he has continued his rise through the rankings and is, certainly going to be a 5-star. He's from Georgia, right? I forget where in Georgia, but he's from down in Georgia.
With him.
Yeah. On the southern swing. And Ohio State is in this. He's not signing for another 18 months. He is a kid from the deep South. We will see what, this may be one where, what position does he want to play? He probably, does he want to be a 3-4 outside, outside edge guy? Okay, well, what is Ohio State going to show him in terms of how they're going to implement that over the next 2 seasons? There's a long way to go. The answer to, does Ohio State land Tyler Atkinson is, I don't know, maybe check back in a little while.
Yeah, for sure. And the same with the next question that Mika has on Riley Pettyjohn, Texas linebacker. Like, I have no updates on him other than, he was at Ohio State a couple of weeks ago and is a Texas kid that is very involved with some Texas schools as well. So I know there's communications with among the class there trying to, obviously get him involved, but good luck. I mean, he may end up at Ohio State, but when the Texas schools are up and recruiting Texas, you really, really have to work hard.
And Kevin Noon chimes in, Ohio State has a better shot at Deuce Geralds than Tyler Atkinson. Not saying they can't get Tyler, but that's going to be a tough one. Yeah, I mean, you are trying to pull a 5-star prospect out of Georgia when the in-state school is pretty darn good. Typically the process, the process where Ohio State really goes and raids a southern state is in-state schools are kind of off, and maybe the coaches are in trouble, and like end of the Mac Brown era, they went down there and just plundered Texas. Texas A&M was down. Texas was down. They really plundered Texas. When they went in and they got, Von Bell, Raekwon McMillan out of Georgia, well, that was kind of late Mark Richt Georgia, where the Bulldogs were down. Tech was running, the Paul Johnson triple option at that point. So they were not a, real NFL development program and were viewed that way. So you could go in and kind of pull out guys like that. South Florida, Miami has been down for 20 years. Ohio State had really made a home in South Florida, pulling kids out of South Florida because nobody has been home in Coral Gables for quite a while. So, Georgia right now, I'm sure I don't need to tell you this, Georgia right now is pretty good. Kirby Smart's job security, pretty solid. So, yeah, pulling anyone out of Georgia is not going to be the easiest task. But, Ohio State is as capable as anyone, when you look at a lot of these offer lists or top 5 lists for the Southern guys, it's, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, whatever other Southern programs, and then Ohio State. Like Ohio State is the outlier there because they can do stuff. They can pull guys out of the South that virtually no one else can. And Kevin says Ohio State probably running number 2 for Pettyjohn behind Texas right now.
And we can cap the recruiting talk with the comment there from It's Just Me Tim 79 saying,
Yes,
recruiting is so boring. I get that OSU is the best at it. When does the season start? The season starts, I believe, August 30. Tom, how many days? Right off the top of your head, how many days right now? No looking.
I'm going to say, well, I know yesterday it was 169 days to the Michigan game. I think we're at about, I think it was 79 days. Let me see if I'm right.
All right.
79, I believe, was the number yesterday, but we'll see.
But that was for the number for today or tomorrow?
For the Akron game. 78 days today, Friday, June 13th, 78 days till the Akron game. So pretty close.
There you go. And we are 1 month, like 5 weeks out from Big Ten Media Days. So that'll be that's happening as well. And then August 1st is the first day of fall camp. And if you guys have not yet tried to purchase your tickets for the first 4 days of fall camp, check out Ohio State Buckeyes.com. And why am I giving them a plug? Have they paid for any advertising? No, I'm just giving that to the fans. If you want to go check out practice, if they have not sold those out yet, go check it out and check out some stretching and some jogging and position drills. And that's about it. But you can say you're there, and then if they allow us in as well, come say hello to Tom. He loves that. Say hello to Kevin. He loves that. Do not address me in any way. That's just
no eye contact.
For sure.
Look at your feet, not his feet, your feet.
Yeah, and you know what? Don't. If you want to talk to me, tell Tom or tell Kevin, and they will check with me to see if I have time. Generally, I do not. And if you just want to see me yell at them saying I don't have time, go ahead and ask them to see if you can talk to me, just in case you want to see them get yelled at, and I will be happy to do that for you. But Tom, anything else before we go? We do have to hit the road here. Anything else from the week, from today, from tomorrow?
Yeah, I think. Well, if I knew the news for tomorrow, I would. I know that's kind of the bit with the morning show, but that's not. I don't do the early edition like the old CBS show. So no, don't get tomorrow's paper today. But yeah, no, I think we've covered most of the interesting players from camp this week.
Yeah, and so go ahead and continue to. You can check out everything at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. We'll have more coming up as well, and of course BuckeyeHuddle.com. We are 2 more days of running our subscription sale for an annual subscription right now for $69.99. Go ahead and grab that up because after Father's Day, that price is going away. So go ahead and get it now while you can, and you can find us there on the message board and the stuff behind the paywall as well. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.